Something that's always intrigued me in One Piece is just how people are so divisive on eras. When you have a conversation with certain people, they are strictly on the side of the old era. Some people, you can tell they're absolutely writing for the new era. So today, that's what we're talking about, the old era versus the new era. So I'm sure you're probably asking, what do I mean by the old era versus the new era? Well, basically, the era of Garp, Roger, Whitebeard, Rayleigh, those guys, versus Luffy's era currently, right? With Blackbeard, Luffy, Kid, Shanks, Kaido, etc. It's important to clarify that in between Roger and Luffy, there's somewhat of an era between there, because post Roger, you can say that's Whitebeard's era. That's what they said at Marineford for the most part. You know, that's after Roger. Post Roger, the Yonko system is established. Of course, some people fell off, namely Shiki, but he had a plan for 20 years, so we have to see about that. Whitebeard, quote unquote, took over, and Big Mom and Kaido, they rose to power. And of course, Shanks slotted in a lot later, exactly 6 years ago from the current story. So directly after Roger's era isn't Luffy's era. There's an era in between there, but I think for the most part, we can kind of place these characters into two eras, right? For instance, I think Whitebeard is part of the older era, right? Because that's when he was most prominent. That's when he was in his prime. For Big Mom as well, I think she's part of the older era. While we don't know Kaido's age, Oda did mention that Kaido's closer to Shanks' generation, more so a part of Shanks' generation. So for Kaido, he slots in there. Other characters who you could say are part of that era includes like Blackbeard, Katakuri, characters ranging from, you know, late 30s to early 50s, right? That's around there. Doflamingo, Crocodile, those guys, that's their era. Now we have the new era, which is Luffy's era with Blackbeard and the Supernova. But also, this isn't just comparing pirates. The eras, for the most part, people compare the pirates and the Marines. After Roger's era, in regards to the Marines, there wasn't that much turnover. With Akainu and Kizaru being in their mid-50s, with Aokiji being pretty much 50 years old, they're more so a part of the era post-Roger. So while they know of Roger and what happened back then, they became prominent or they became admirals during the era of Shanks and Kaido, per se. And of course, the newer era Marines with Green Bull and Fujitora, we don't know enough about them to kind of just compare them. So for this video, we're kind of comparing, you know, from the Garps and the Sengokus and the Kongs to the Akainu, Aokiji, and Kizarus, as well as comparing the pirates from the bygone era of Roger and Shiki and those guys to the pirates of today. I think something that's important to note is the ecosystem, right? Just back then with Roger, Whitebeard, Shiki, you know, Kong, Sengoku, Garp, it was a completely different era. Of course, they had pirates, but not nearly to the volume that there are now. So I think the quality of pirate that you would come across was probably better back then. Pirates that we come across that are older pirates, they normally have some legendary status, right? In regards to Don Chin Jiao, you have Crocus, you know, the Roger pirates, the old Whitebeard pirates, it seems to be a higher quality of pirate because again, they just wasn't that many pirates back then that we know of, at least. For Roger and his declaration of the One Piece, that obviously led to the new pirate era, which leads to more pirates trying to chase this thing. Back then, there weren't many people chasing what Roger was chasing. I don't think Roger even knew what he was chasing, but there was a sense of adventure that was around him that he felt there was something greater than him that he had to find. And of course, through the poneglyphs, etc., he started uncovering more information. Then it became a lot more clear that Roger was on a journey unlike no other person before. And that's why the other pirates around him, of course, they were chasing different things, but they weren't chasing what Roger was chasing. But again, the quality of pirate back then, it was just on a different level. The Marines from back then, it's hard not to have those people in a special tier because they were going against the likes of legendary pirates to the caliber of Whitebeard and Gold Roger. Sengoku and Garp, in regards to strength, they're very comparable. Some people put Sengoku over Garp just strictly because he has a devil fruit. Some people put Garp over Sengoku because he was the one that went to God's Valley, etc. Personally, I got Garp over Sengoku, but I don't think it's that much of a difference, but they're both legendary Marines. Sengoku being revealed as a Marine that has King's Haki does elevate him a bit because this shows that he has the qualities of a king. Of course, he was the fleet admiral. Not saying Garp doesn't have the abilities or the leadership skills to be the fleet admiral. Leadership skills I'm not so sure about, but Sengoku has it, right? I still have Garp slightly ahead of him, but it is very close. For Kong, it is very peculiar that he isn't mentioned at all when we got to the flashback. Like in that flashback, they mentioned Sengoku, of course, Garp. There's no mention of Kong, even though Kong was a fleet admiral when Garp was a vice admiral and Sengoku was an admiral. Now Garp, he could have been an admiral if he wanted to. He just didn't want that position. Not only because of the celestial dragons, but also he can move around a bit more when he's just the vice admiral. So for the older era, I think they elevated a lot because of the people they were going against in regards to the Marines, right? They were going against the pirate king and the world's strongest pirate ever from what we know so far. And so automatically you get more acclaim. And of course, their careers are pretty much over. So we can view them in totality. Now to the newer era, post Roger, post Garp and Sengoku and those guys. Of course, Sengoku's era as Fleet Admiral was, with Shanks and Kaido. We're just going to say the guys after them, right? With Aokiji, Akainu, Kizaru, the Smokers, the Fujitoras, the Green Bulls. They do not get the credit or the respect that the old admirals get because in comparison, there's not enough to go off of that these people have. Some people use the Garp thing as far as Garp cornering Roger numerous times. Therefore, Garp does get the respect of being at least on Roger's level, and Roger and Whitebeard, they get the respect of being on a different level as opposed to the Yonko of today. Bro, it's such a weird thing because some of it I do believe and agree with, but it's weird because again, there are more pirates today, meaning there's more competition today. And a lot of these pirates, they basically come from the old era, with Shanks from Roger, Big Mom and Kaido from Rocks, Whitebeard you can throw in there as well, Blackbeard from Whitebeard, and Luffy comes from the Shanks and, kind of the Roger mold as well. So for the Marines today, because there are more pirates, there's more area to cover. I think while the quality of pirate was better back then, where it wasn't that many pirates as they are today, so therefore there are less pirates. So each pirate you come across, they probably would be stronger than the average pirate of today's era. Do you guys believe in the iron sharpens iron theory? Where today we have the Yonko system, right? Where there are 4 recognizable pirates who are the strongest in the world. Back then there wasn't that system. You had pirates that had a claim in Roger, Whitebeard, Shiki for the most part. Those are the 3, and Dun Chinjiao. And from what we can tell, Whitebeard and Roger really weren't competing. Whitebeard wanted to be free, basically for his family structure. Roger was chasing something else. So Roger really didn't have that much competition as far as what he was going for in comparison to the Yonko today. The Yonko today, they have some information in regards to the poneglyphs, and so that's why they're at a stalemate, being at a stalemate for years. Whitebeard, of course, he was a part of the newer generation as well. I'm talking about his era before he died, but it remained stagnant for a while, and Oda really didn't touch on this too much. But the Yonko, they don't really come into contact with each other as frequently, if at all. The person who's come in contact with all the Yonko, from what we know of, is Shanks, stopping Kaido, literally going to Whitebeard, clashing with Blackbeard in the past, and then of course, not into contact, but face to face at Marineford. The Big Mom one, we're not too sure about. We don't know if Shanks ever came in contact with Big Mom while he was a Yonko. Maybe he was with Roger when Roger went to Big Mom's island back then. But the Yonko of today, even though there's that system and it should be a breeding ground to create stronger pirates, they don't come into contact with each other. Also, the newer generation, what do we know them for? They have feats, right? In regards to Kaido being the world's strongest creature, it's some vagueness about that because does that have the same acclaim as the world's strongest man? With Big Mom, for the most part, she's been in Whole Cake Island and doing her thing for a long time, where she isn't really part of this new generation, but she's still active and doing things today, but she really hasn't accomplished much. And again, that goes back to Big Mom and being a female, and some of her incompetence. People don't view her on the level even close to that of the legendary status of Whitebeard and Roger. Bounty isn't a reflection of just strength, right? But it is a reflection of threat level and I think importance, and somewhat you can view it as legendary status. Whitebeard and Roger are the only 2 over 5 bill. Big Mom is less than Kaido, and Shanks is less than Kaido and Big Mom. They're around 4 bills. So it's like, without Oda spelling it out for us, he's telling us that these pirates are just not on the legendary status that Roger and Whitebeard was on. I'm not gonna lie, I would really love to see the bounty of someone like Shiki, to see how a legendary pirate is viewed today, or even really some of those guys. So to the admirals of today, Akainu, Aokiji, and Kizaru. Back then, the admirals, for the most part, they were viewed as equal to the pirates. Even if you had the pirates slightly above, there wasn't that much separation. I think today, in today's era, in regards to Yonko versus Admiral, a lot of people have a clear separation between the two, where people feel like it would take at least 2 admirals to take down a Yonko. Most people feel like 1 admiral could not take out a Yonko, until Akainu, when one could argue Akainu probably has the best feat out of any character in history. Now, before I get into that, there's something I must clarify. Everything that went down with the Rocks pirates, we need more information on, because if Roger and Garp truly took down all those pirates by themselves, that's an insane thing that can't be matched, right? In Rocks, he was pretty much the pirate king before Roger, even though he was chasing something different. He wanted to rid the world of the celestial dragons and become the king of the world. But again, we need more context with that situation to see exactly what happened. Did Whitebeard really participate? It's just some vagueness around that. Outside of that situation, right, which could be, it's legendary. Akainu is the only only other person in the story that we know of who fought another top tier, meaning another person who is top 10 in the verse at that time, and come out with a decisive victory. Now, people are trying to use the sword thing and say, well, maybe they struck a deal. I'm like, you didn't have to give your leg to strike this deal. I think even if there was a sword thing, that was probably discussed after the fact. I think they really went at it in regards to one person becoming the fleet admiral, especially with Aokiji being so adamant that Akainu does not deserve to be the fleet admiral. So Akainu, with that feat, he does get more respect than he did pre-time skip, because they're like, well, he beat Aokiji, he should be a step above, he's now the fleet admiral, we have to give him that respect. But I think Akainu and Aokiji should get that respect. Basically, it wasn't that much separation to the point that Aokiji could have won and he could have been a fleet admiral. Yes, he lost, but I think he should get at least the same respect that Akainu gets, where people should probably consider the fact that Aokiji could take out a Yonko himself. Because people say Akainu, maybe he could end the series, but I always say, well, what's going to change from now for Akainu towards end the series? He's already had his insane fight. He's probably at the strength and level that he's going to be at the end of the series. Another person is Kizaru. Granted, he doesn't get the respect that Aokiji and Akainu does because he didn't fight, but Kizaru was portrayed on the same level as them pre-time skip. The blooming thing, I'm not so sure about that. I'm not going to even try to incorporate it as much here, but I think Kizaru deserved that respect as well. So if we have Kong, Garp, and Sengoku back then, for this era, you would have to have Aokiji, Akainu, and Kizaru. Of course, Aokiji's not a part of the Marines anymore, but I think Oda is using a clever way of telling us, like, this is the new era, and the new era of Marines should be respected just like the older era. Of course, the older era is more accomplished, so they get more respect, but I don't think there's much separation between the older era and the new era. Now it comes down to feats and accomplishments. Like, what can this new era accomplish? Going to Luffy and Blackbeard, we're not sure who their counterparts will be. Some speculate Fujitora, some speculate Kobe. Smoker, people have taken out of the running because of his showing at Punk Hazard. A lot of people would agree Blackbeard and Luffy, in regards to strength, should get to where Roger and Whitebeard were. In regards to Luffy's strength at the end of it, I have mixed thoughts and mixed feelings on that because of what it's been represented as in regards to Luffy and his ultimate power. But I think the eras are not that far apart, and we probably could view the new era slightly above because of the potential that Luffy and Blackbeard have. So for me, the new era is everything post Roger and Prime Beard. I think when Whitebeard took over post Roger, the inclination is that that's when he got sick and he started to deteriorate. Yes, he was still probably the world's strongest man, but he wasn't really active at all. We don't know much of what Whitebeard got into back then, but it seems like he was just content being peaceful on the seas with his family. When you look at it in totality, to just finish this up, because this is literally a discussion just giving you guys my thoughts on how I view the old era versus the new era, there's not that much separation. We just have to wait until their careers are over to kind of compare them. A lot of people have Rayleigh on the level of like Roger and Whitebeard and those guys, you know, because he was a pirate from back then. So for me, if Rayleigh is the old era of a commander that's, you know, maybe close to his captain or just as strong, Ben Beckman could be that of the newer era, right? And of course, Zoro and Luffy will be that for the current era. To sum it up, I do believe the newer era deserves a lot more respect than it gets, but I understand why people have the older era as superior to where we currently are. However, looking at the entire situation, it's really not that much separation, especially for the Marines' respect in regards to the admirals and the pirates and where they will be, especially with Luffy and Blackbeard by the end of One Piece. Another thing is Shanks and him probably being the next coming of Roger, and even Ace. Ace's career was cut short, and I think Ace could have probably gotten to the Whitebeard and Roger level in regards to strength as well. Sabo's an outlier there that could be really strong. We're not sure exactly how strong Dragon is, but for Shanks in particular, how much of Shanks's strength and just notoriety is cut short, not only due to him betting his arm on the new era, but also his goals and motivations. For the most part, we don't know exactly what Shanks wants. So that's up in the air, but what if he was really motivated to be the strongest or be the next Pirate King? How would Shanks be perceived? Because even back then, the Gorosei, when they were talking about Shanks, they were more worried about Crocodile not being a warlord anymore than Shanks being on the move. Of course, they were worried about Shanks meeting up with Whitebeard and stuff, but they know Shanks, so they weren't as worried as if Kaido was on the move or Big Mom. It's really all interesting, just thinking about the two eras and how they intersect, the people that directly followed Roger and Whitebeard, and then where we are now in the story. But guys, give me your thoughts. What do you feel about it? How do you feel about the old era versus the new era? Which side are you on? Where do you lean? But yeah, give me your thoughts. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter at BrogDAce. Follow me on Instagram at BrogD.Ace. Thank you to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Like and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.